This is just what I call associated peripheral stuff, but it's all connected to the center point of a galaxy, or if you will, a photon. I mentioned this to Dr. Mummy Saraki's channel because when things pop up, like when I get up and then I decide to turn my phone on, it's not a coincidence that a particular channel that I'll go to look at that. If I'm not supposed to experience that, I won't experience it. So I was experiencing Dr. Mummy Saraki talking about, she focuses a lot on the narrative, the script. You know what a script is, right? Not like a prescription, although we understand what a prescription is, which is an AI drug. And then, so if I jump around here and I use different words to describe, if you will, what you experience in your soul's consciousness, what you experience with your mirror. So one of the things that I wrote or made a comment was about voltage. So you know that photons kick out electrons. So you look at the spin of a galaxy, it's going to be based on how much photons are being kicked out, right? Because photons are kicking out electrons. So the more powerful you are in the light, the more powerful you are in voltage, right? The spin, like the spin of a volcano, like this volcanic shield right here that protects the tribal shield. 12 by 12, 15D. Okay, that's your original blueprint of HU1. So I was watching this morning a channel called Galactic Talk with Peter the Insider, talking about Hobbs and Shaw, Fast and Furious. Remember, they got rid of Walker, right? Okay. So I've mentioned this many times before about when you're at war in your own mirror, because magnets are mirror. Okay. So when I look at what I call them characters in a movie, or if you will, phenotypes, haploids, the energy that is represented by what they're experiencing in energy, what they experience in their mirror based on who it is that they are as energy. So you know that their perception of their power is inverted because they believe in their mind, that if I acquire more electrons in the name of money, and that becomes power because it's electrical power, right? Now the more electrons that I am accumulating in numbers allows me to hire more minds of energy in which they will do what? Answer to the empire. The ones that have the most money. Now that they have the most money, now they can hire the most minds that are going to be working on behalf of that corporation in which their intelligence and their creative mind are now working for me to produce the technology that becomes the transfer. Now, as I've mentioned this before, because I knew this as a child, now you get into a couple of math terms. Log scales, acceleration, velocity. Or if you will, how fast can neurons communicate with each other in order to produce the technology that is going to benefit my empire? Or if you will, my corporation. Now I can use that technology, and this is where we get into the competitive side of things. How fast are these neurons connecting with each other in order to produce what it is that they thus simulate, and thus we experience through that simulation, if you will. Now you get into the difference between X, the illusion of X, or if you will, artificial intelligence, which is finite. So you already know when you look at all the Fast and Furious and what Peter the Insider talks about through ACIO, you realize you already know their future, which means they don't have one. And why is that? Because there's always going to be accountability for how you use your energy to be what it is that you experience with your energy, what you experience in your mirror, which is your magnet. Okay, so I saw a little tiny post this morning, which was put up by a female friend of mine called Irina, about a monad. And a monad is one. And I've covered this before. A one is a mated chip, if you will, which is a hyperdrive. Right? Hyper superconductivity. Right? So essentially what it means, because this is how I experience being me, there isn't any time. There's only what love is. So if you think of that as a single photon kicking out electrons, The faster you're kicking out electrons, the more powerful your voltage, right? So you realize I can sit in a single place at a single point of no time in order to realize you're already more powerful for them because there isn't any time. But there is time for them. Okay, so they exist in time. We don't exist in time, which means we can be wherever we want to be because wherever we are, love is. That's a neo, or if you will, the one, which means I experience eternity because there isn't any time. So that means you are the source of photons, source of light, which is living light, which is an oversoul, which is what I am, which is androgynous, which means I have chosen to serve forever on behalf of the law of one, which is a monad. Okay, so that makes it relatively easy when you're a 4 and 6 year old, 8-year-old child experiencing what I'm experiencing that I'm not supposed to be experiencing because I'm experiencing something that is less than what I am. I am. I am what love is. So I knew through my heart and my soul that I was an eternal being because I experience eternal love that flows through my heart that I share with others. So another word that can be used to describe that is what's called a purifier. And that simply means that the hyperdrive is running so fast. You're, how do I put this? There was a couple words that Irina mentioned that was in that text called load bearing. You know what ball bearings are, right? The mechanical side of things, gear heads, what I call gear heads, differential, torque displacement, fluid, goo codes, right? Oil, viscosity. So you realize that you're burning up an enormous amount of goo codes, okay? Mathematical codes that do not represent what love is because you're running the fastest drive motor, okay? So you realize the mission or the job that you're doing and why you're here, which is to do what represent the highest law of one, because you know that love is a law. That's right. That's what I am. I represent the highest law, which is the highest code of conduct, conductor. The conductor of an engine, the engine of creation. That's right. I represent the engine of creation, okay, which is the one law, which is the law of Adam, which is Adam cycling at the highest speed of a love vibration, so that you're experiencing a state of peace, which is a state of mind, which means your energy, which is your consciousness, is experiencing a state of eternal peace, which means you're not at war with your mirror. They are. Okay? That's your shadow group. They're dangerous. So all you have to do is consider how the acceleration of technology transfer, say between one group in one galaxy and another group in another galaxy, right? Because they've managed to learn how to be able to communicate and use technology to make these deals and cut these alliances, in which now they're using technology to extend themselves, right? And now you begin to realize how they use that technology. So they reveal all this through their movies, and particularly through Fast and Furious, but that's not the only one. I used to keep a bibliography of how you can translate how this all works because it's all associated, and it's associated through cellular memories, right? So when you realize you're a monad, and I've mentioned this before about minus, slash, plus, simple arithmetic calculator of accounting for your energy. So you're a built-in mathematician, math codes, right? So you know, as I mentioned before, about circles, codes, and circles. When you're hitting every single one of those, that's an enormous amount of fire, which means the photons are kicking out an enormous amount of voltage. You're hitting all the codes. So in all the codes, the base 12, which is pH 12, which is 1200 megahertz, you're running a high-speed transmitter, which means you're burning off a lot of goo codes that do not represent base 12, right? Now you're in the genetic modification side of things, and you get into the gene swarming side of things. Now you get into code transfer side of things, right? And this is where I love Dante Sartori, who doesn't have his site up anymore, but he produced a number of videos that showed you how code transfers take place, even between dogs and cats, even between other species organisms that are transferring codes between one and another. So, for example, if I was a programmer and I programmed the codes, which are the instruction sets that go into the chromosomes to say a bird, right? And you could actually see this in another movie that I watched part of last night, which was, what was the name of that? Morbius. Now you get into Mobius strips, the Mobius, that's on the ACIO. And you could see on the data screen where this guy was disabled and he was talking about, hey, I'm a doctor. And they talked about all diseases are blood-borne diseases. Now you're into bloodlines. Now you're into blood types. Now you're into negative and positive polarity and how it all gets associated. And right there on that little screen that he was looking at, where he was having a blood transfusion, if you will, it had said chimera, cells stabilized. And then you saw what he became and what he was able to do. These are all big reveals, see? And so when I was watching this morning on Galactic Talk with Peter the Insider, talking about the Fast and Furious movies with, what's his name? Jason Statham, I believe is his name, and The Rock. You know, basically another Schwarzenegger, Terminator, right? Rise of the Machines. Then you get into the integration, augmentation of super soldiers. And now you get into Blade Runner, different versions. Hey, I just took out a cyborg. What version was that? What model was that? Oh, that model came out in, when was that? The year 4136. I remember I mentioned this before, version after version after version after version. We're going to improve on every cyborg. So it's just like that link that I put up, which was just very short, where there was a conversation with Data, who was an android, Information Management Services, right? And then you had a guy that was working for the Starfleet Federation, who I believe himself was a captain. Then you had, I believe he was a commander, but it doesn't matter. But it's the conversation and what you learn in the conversations taking place between the people that are there discussing the subject of machines, artificial intelligence, information management systems, right? And a soul, where a machine or an android does not have a soul. He does not have emotions, energy in motion, powerful energy in motions with a soul. Okay, that was only about a 4-minute clip, but you got the message, the difference between the two, if you will, between artificial intelligence and machines that perform information management number crunching services, okay, and what it means to have a soul, right? And then you can tie that directly into Neil, remember, and Mr. Smith, artificial intelligence and the machines. It's your fault, Neil. It's your fault we're machines, right? And then you can see the goo codes, black goo codes, all the goo codes, mathematical codes. So then you can get into Mama's goo, Mother Earth, the sentient essence of Mother Earth goo, which Sheila gets. And I've had that many times before. I ran out of the last porcelain ceramic container that I had of that goo. And a lot of times I can't even get through TSA. Most of the stuff that I use wherever I go to do the work that I do, because I move around to different places so fast, I have to reacquire those things that I use that I put in my body, most of which is high-speed stuff. So the word about load is like a sponge. You know what a sponge is, right? Water worlds, mostly water, fire water, right? 300-to-1 ratio, right? Or 1 to 300, 1 unit of water will cool 300 units of heat, right? PSI, pounds per square inch. How much can you compress into a space? Energy, right? Remember Trinity, the Trinity site with Oppenheimer, critical mass expansion. How they triggered that? Remember what was the name of those bombs? Fat Boy. They called one of them Fat Boy. So anyway, a girl that I was with for 23 years mentioned to somebody else, my husband's like a sponge. He absorbs everything. So you understand what it means to be a mated chip, a monad, an oversoul. And it's called load-bearing capacity, which means a sponge. It's picking up all the water. What is water? Consciousness, which is memory, living spirit in water. So these are major, a polarity integrator is a major transmuter, because as a monad means you're experiencing everything simultaneously. It is based on frequency and vibration of what people are experiencing through all their cellular memories. Because we're all connected, communicating with each other, right? Yeah, now I become aware of what you're aware of. Now you're aware of what I'm aware of. So now you get into the idea of what's his name talked about in the movie Inception. Plant an idea in your mind. That's energy. Not that idea is in your mind, see? An idea was planted in Oppenheimer's mind about building a bomb. Now you get into weaponized consciousness, and now you get into consciousness that is experiencing what love is with the soul. Now, if you can extrapolate all of that out using the exponential function and the acceleration of what it is that you're learning through ideas that are passed between one unit of consciousness and another with neurons and circuits, and what they're building, and why they're building, what they're building, when they're building it, across space and time, right? Now, do the math on that. You get the picture? So when you realize there is no time, it means, hey, we can uncreate whatever got created. All you got to do is burn it off. That brings up an entirely different set of complexities, doesn't it? Who are you burning off? Right? Tree branches, branch directories, seeded races on the tree of life, the all creation, right? Well, we got to sort this out. This being gets to go up. This being doesn't get to go up. It's based on vibration, the speed of who you are based on how fast you're learning in your mirror what best serves you and what doesn't. Because at the end of the day, intelligence is higher learning. Okay? So these guys that are shadow beings, they went to the wrong schools, didn't they? They were not learning very fast, were they? No, they chose a different direction. That's why they do what they do. Right? So they can't outrun us. We're there before they are. And they know that. So it's a game that they play through tech. And, of course, artificial intelligence and technology transfer by cutting deals because of their perception of power. So they know that they're not the most powerful because they know that they're not eternity. So I used to know this as a child. They're always living on borrowed time. And that's why they're chasing their tail. And that's why they keep moving, trying to play hide and seek through the versions of tech that they use to outrun Neo. Okay. But they're not faster than Neo. So when you see all these movies with Fast and Furious with Jason Statham boxing these guys out, Neo's faster, Mr. Statham. Neo is faster. So they're not a living photon experiencing living light, which is what love is in their heart and their soul. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing what they do, would they? And that's basic common sense. So when you're a polarity integrator, I absorb everything. It's just like a sponge. Everything that's held within the water worlds. Without water, you don't have a living universe because DNA is born out of water. So when your water worlds are in balance and you're at 0 ohms, that's called the law of least effort, which is the law of one, which is what love is. That's as simple as it gets, huh? Have a great day. Thank you, Peter, for putting that information up. We love you all. Be good to yourselves.